I think the first thing, though, is to get clear on what these rare earth elements actually are.
Right, because that name, rare earth, it's so misleading, isn't it?
It really is.
Makes you think of some incredibly scarce, almost mythical material.
Exactly. But it's actually a group of 17 elements, chemically quite similar. You've got the 15 lanthanides plus scandium and yttrium.
Yeah.
And the fascinating thing is they're not inherently rare in the Earth's crust. The challenge, the real issue, is finding them concentrated enough in deposits where it's actually economical to pull them out. That's the tricky part, finding those geological sweet spots.
Okay, that makes sense. So it's less about cosmic scarcity and more about practical economic extraction.
Got it. So our mission today, then, is to understand the why behind this export halt, figure out who's likely to feel the pinch the most, and what the responses might look like.
Yep.
Let's try and cut through some of the noise here.
Agreed. So starting with the why. According to this analysis we have, the halt, which kicked in after that April 4th announcement, looks like direct retaliation.
Retaliation for what?
For tariffs, specifically tariffs the U.S. imposed.
Okay, a direct countermove. But here's a really interesting twist the report mentions. Because China apparently hasn't set up a specific licensing system, one just targeting the U.S.
Right.
The disruption isn't contained. It's hitting shipments to all countries.
Yeah, that's a key point. It really broadens the impact, doesn't it? Whether that was the full intention or just a consequence of how they implemented it. Definitely raises the stakes for global disruption.
And to really get why this halt is such a big deal, we need to appreciate just how vital these rare earths are. I mean, for modern technology.
Or absolutely. These aren't just, niche metals for labs. They're literally inside so much of the tech we use constantly.
Exactly. Give us some examples.
Well, think about the device you might be listening on right now, your smartphone. Full of them.
Right.
Then you've got electric vehicles, huge for the green transition.
Yeah.
Right? They rely heavily on REEs. Wind turbines, too. LED lights. Even flat-screen TVs. It's surprisingly widespread.
It really is. It's hard to think of a major tech sector they don't touch somehow.
And it goes beyond just consumer gadgets, doesn't it? The source material really highlights their importance in some critical areas, too.
That's right. Defense and aerospace, for example, we're talking precision-guided missiles.
Wow.
Jet engines, sophisticated radar systems. These are fundamental components for national security.
So, materials that power our daily lives and underpin national defense.
Yeah.
And that link to the green energy transition you mentioned, that seems absolutely crucial, too.
Totally crucial. It's not just about today's tech. It's about enabling a sustainable future.
So.
Well, solar panels rely on them, those high-capacity batteries for EVs and grid storage.
Okay.
And especially the powerful permanent magnets. You find those in wind turbines and electric vehicle motors.
Right, the magnets are key.
They really are. These elements have unique magnetic catalytic properties, stuff that's hard to replicate with other materials. That's what makes them so strategically valuable, both economically and, environmentally.
Okay, given all that, it's no wonder this export halt is causing concern. The analysis talks about a potential global supply crunch. Why now? Why is the impact expected to be so widespread?
Well, the core reason, as the report lays out, is China's dominance in processing. They refine over 85% of the world's rare earths.
85%? That's huge.
It's massive. This refining step, separating and purifying the individual elements from the ore, it's complex. China has invested heavily and built up massive expertise there.
So when the dominant refiner stops exporting.
Exactly. The ripple effects are felt almost immediately, everywhere. The report specifically flags the U.S., Japan, Vietnam, and Germany as likely being hit hardest.
A serious list of industrial economies. But hang on, the report mentioned something about Japan being maybe a bit better prepared.
Yes, that's an interesting detail. It seems some Japanese companies have been quite proactive, building up stockpiles. Some apparently have over a year's worth of inventory.
Wow, okay. So some foresight there, anticipating potential disruptions.
Seems like it. Which suggests maybe lessons were learned from the past, because this isn't the first time China's used REEs like this, is it?
No, the analysis draws that parallel quite clearly, back to 2010, right?
Exactly. 2010, there was that territorial dispute with Japan, and China temporarily banned RE exports. It was a wake-up call for many about how these materials could become geopolitical tools.
So there's precedent. And the report also mentions a more recent pattern, too. with other materials.
Yes, that's also important context. Between 2023 and early 2025, China had already put restrictions on exports of things like gallium, germanium, graphite, and tungsten, specifically targeting the U.S.
Oh, okay.
So this REE halt fits into a broader, more recent strategy of, let's say, managing critical mineral supply chains.
Right, this isn't happening in a vacuum.
Yeah.
Now, here's where it gets interesting for another major player, India. The analysis suggests India might actually face minimal disruption. That seems a bit surprising, perhaps.
It might seem surprising on the surface, yeah. But the report offers a couple of reasons.
Okay, like what?
First, India's overall consumption of rare earths, while it is growing, is still relatively low compared to, say, the U.S. or Japan.
Gotcha. Do we have numbers?
Yeah, the figures given are for 2023-24, India imported about 2,270 tons. Now, that was up 23% from 4 years earlier, so demand is rising.
But the total amount is still comparatively small.
Exactly, small on the global scale.
And where were those imports coming from? Mostly China.
Predominantly, yes. Around 65% from China directly, another 10% or so from Hong Kong.
So still reliant on China for imports. But the sheer volume isn't enough to cause a major crisis if those imports stop.
That seems to be the assessment. The overall quantity just isn't that substantial yet.
And what about India's own production? Do they have domestic capacity?
They do. There's the state-run company IRL Ltd. Their annual capacity is around 10,000 tons.
Okay, 10,000 tons. How does that stack up against China's refining?
Well, that's the comparison. China's refining capacity in 2023 was reportedly around 200,000 tons.
Ah, okay. So India's domestic output is modest by comparison.
Yeah, pretty modest, yes. So while they are a producer, they couldn't suddenly fill a major global gap. It really seems like India's lower current demand is the main factor insulating them, relatively speaking.
Right. So while others scramble, India might be in a somewhat more stable spot, short-term anyway, just because they don't use as much yet. Okay, looking ahead then, what are the longer-term responses likely to be? This has got to push countries to rethink their supply chains.
Oh, absolutely. It puts a massive spotlight on the risks of having such a concentrated supply chain for critical stuff like this. The report mentions efforts by various countries to build up their own domestic capabilities, mining, processing.
Makes sense.
But, and it's a big but, the experts quoted are cautious. They warn that actually breaking free from China's dominance, especially in that complex refining stage, is going to be really difficult.
Yeah, I can imagine. It's not just finding the rocks, it's the whole sophisticated processing chain, which China has honed for years.
Exactly. And the U.S. seems to be looking at some, well, pretty ambitious alternatives.
Like what? Deep sea mining.
Yeah, that's mentioned. The Trump administration was apparently drafting orders to look into stockpiling REEs mined from the Pacific seabed, from those polymetallic nodules down there.
Wow, deep sea mining. That opens up a whole other can of worms, doesn't it? Technologically, environmentally.
Huge challenges. And perhaps unsurprisingly, China isn't keen on those plans.
How so?
Their foreign ministry has raised concerns, pointing towards the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, the role of the International Seabed Authority, basically saying, hold on, there are international rules here.
So adding international law and politics into the mix. Complex stuff.
Very. And interestingly, India is also looking towards the seabed.
Oh, really? Same area?
Different area, the Andaman Sea. India launched an auction last November for exploration blocks there.
Okay.
These areas are thought to have nodules and crusts potentially rich in heavy rare earths. So it's a similar idea, exploring alternative, non-traditional sources to boost mineral security down the line.
Okay, fascinating.